So, good morning. Thank you for coming. And brightening up this kind of gray day. Glad to see everybody. And we're very fortunate to have our Director of Veterans Services, our good friend wTerryHart, with us this morning. It's kind of, it'll be November, and I call him and say, could you come and talk for, sort of in honor of Veterans Day, because we really appreciate all the services and opportunities you provide and the resources. And he's always has something new to tell us. So we'll have, next month, Men's Breakfast will be December 5th, Thursday the 5th. And I think it's Thursday, first Thursday, and Dr. Dan Tallman will be with us, who's the hospitalist with Merrimack Valley Hospital. So he's been out before, and he's great, a great guy again, bringing us really good information. So we've got that to look forward to. Thank you so much. I'm going to go clean up some more. I think we finished all the coffee, but...
Sorry, guys, I took most of it. I have to really keep the eyelids open here.
No, we had a late night last night.
First of all, we have been asked to provide veterans tomorrow morning, 9:15, 9:30 at Pembroke School. And they would like to know if some veterans will come and show. They're having their Veterans Day ceremonies for the elementary school, and they're looking for veterans to show up. Now, unfortunately, her name was, I think, Camille Early is the secretary. She contacted me yesterday, which is, that's just too late when we're talking about Veterans Day ceremonies. But if any of you guys have the time, would you contact Pembroke, let them know that you can come and show up. It really is important that we try to have some veterans show up for their presentation there at the school. Did any of you do that last year? Anybody go last year? Okay, I know Doug Dawes did, and he said it was great. It was a nice little thing to do. So if you can contact them, I would appreciate it. We really need somebody to show for that.
When the veterans, I'm a veteran myself, when the veterans come there, then what are they supposed to do? Can be certain ritual or something like that?
I don't think you have to do anything. You are the honoree as the veteran. That's what they're looking for.
I can't make it. I'll be in jail.
You'll be in jail?
He spends most of his time there.
Can't stand that place. I know it.
At our age, we're all looking around thinking about our medical benefits and whatnot. Most of us have Medicare. Yes, I did get my card now. I'm officially a member of the club. So, and you take a look at it, and under Mass Health programs, you're supposed to have a supplement and this, that, and the other thing. And then we kick in this thing called Obamacare, which is now driving everybody nuts because they don't know if they're going to lose the health insurance they have, if it's up to snuff for what is required under the federal act. One of the things that I would recommend you consider is signing up for VA healthcare if you are not already in the VA healthcare program, because it's automatically going to meet all the requirements for the state or the federal government. You can use it as a secondary, and just all you got to do is make that physical once a year and still use your private doctor for everything else. Then if you lose coverage with your private doctor, you have that coverage always as a backup. So it's something to consider. If you'd like to do it, one of the reasons I give you the pens is if you look on there, there's an 800 number. That goes right to my office. Call me, we'll set up a time for you to come over, or I'll come over and talk with you here, wherever you want to be, and we'll talk about getting you into the VA healthcare system and whether or not you qualify. And I think most people here will qualify for VA healthcare, depending on when you served and where you served.
I don't know what the qualifications are. Maybe you can run them down.
Okay, be a veteran. Number one, I hope you all have copies of your 214s, your DD 214s. That's a key element. Wasn't 214 in World War II, but it's discharge papers. That's number one, is you got to have a DD 214. Number two is, if you have a service-connected disability, you're one of the top 3 tiers. If you served and have a Purple Heart, you're automatic. If you served in Vietnam, you are automatic. And then they come down the tier and they say, okay, now we're going to look at income and assets. if your assets and income, you know, basically they're looking at income not to exceed 38,000, that's combined if you have a wife. But on top of that is you can have income and assets not to exceed 80,000. That's kind of where it's at. But you owe it to yourself to come on and sit and talk with me anyway, because there may be a lot of other programs. And all I'm gonna do today is highlight some of those things for you. Is anybody here under 65? Didn't think so. Okay. If you served during a period of war, not in the war zone, but during a period of war, you are automatically eligible for a non-service connected pension with aid in attendance if you can qualify. Now, you don't need to write all this stuff down because it's gonna all change, but think about it this way. They take a look at your assets, they take a look at your income. If your assets, your cash convertible type assets, do not exceed $80,000, then they're gonna say, all right, take your income, subtract from it all your medical expenses. If that dips down under about $1,950, we'll bring you back up to that $1,950 level. The goal is to get you down to zero. And for all of us who are facing end-of-life issues here, you know, we may someday want to go into an assisted living facility. And we may be kind of levered into an assisted, not a nursing home, but assisted living. Everything at assisted living, which is about $7 grand a month, is considered a medical expense. Therefore, you subtract that from your income, the VA will bring you up to almost $2 grand a month. And what that does is that means that 80 grand that you got in the bank, that will extend a little bit longer. It will allow you to live in that assisted living facility longer. It allows your assets to extend longer. Your wife, if you die, is eligible for the same thing. Except, they call it a widow's pension with aid and attendance, and a widow's pension is only up at about $1,100 a month, not the $1,950. But it still is something that may extend, you know, what you have for cash assets, you know, a little bit longer, allow you a little bit better quality of life for the rest of your life. There are a lot of people who don't realize that they are constantly making changes in the government in terms of what constitutes a service-connected disability. Right now, there are 10 presumptive issues out of Vietnam, or there were 10 presumptive issues out of Vietnam. In the last couple of years, they've increased that to 13. If you served in the U.S. military at any time and come down with ALS, God forbid, right, it's service connected. We automatically put you in for that. Now that ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease. It means you're probably in your last year of life anyway. But if that happens, or if you know of somebody who has come down with ALS, find out if he was a serviceman. You know, it's service connected no matter which branch, no matter where you serve, no matter when you served, as long as you have an honorable discharge. You know, and we will get that. Now, how do they come up with all of this stuff? This is service connected. In Vietnam, they have the 13 things that are service connected. That's all based on, quote, Agent Orange exposure. Agent Orange exposure is one of those ones that they did based on the fact that the Center for Disease Control says there's a higher incidence of this issue for Vietnam veterans than for the general population. Therefore, with the political pressure in our country, they put pressure on them to say those are service-connected issues. What are they? Son of a gun. Prostate cancer. Gee, do guys get prostate cancer? Yeah, all the time. Doesn't have to have served in Vietnam to get prostate cancer. Type 2 diabetes, another very common one for any man. The others tend to be respiratory cancers, Hodgkin's lymphoma, ischemic heart disease, which is hardening of the arteries, which is, you know, clogging of your blood system. So if you were in service in Vietnam and can prove that you put your foot down in Vietnam, you're eligible for any of those. Now, why do I say put your foot down? Because it's not true of the Blue Water Navy guys. The guys who were off the shore on the ships, sucking that Agent Orange into their evaporators and drinking it, they're not eligible. But the other guys who spent a year or two in a brothel in Saigon, they're eligible automatically, or a day or two, you know. All you have to do is prove you had your feet on the ground. Okay? So those are the type of things, if you say, hey, I just came down with ischemic heart disease. They used to call it coronary artery disease. It had all kinds of different names for it. You need to call me immediately. We need to get that process going for you. Working with a lady who came to see me yesterday. Now, it's a good thing we have some good town clerks in this area. One of my requirements is that they are to send me a copy of the death certificate on any veteran who dies. And what that does is it triggers me to take a look at the cause of death and where and when he served. Well, this gentleman is from Raleigh. He died. He was a Marine. He served in Vietnam. He died of lung cancer. His wife had no idea she was eligible for anything. Well, she's eligible for not only for dependency indemnity compensation because his death is going to be found service connected because he was in Vietnam and died of lung cancer. This is a no-brainer. Even for somebody as screwed up as the VA, this is a no-brainer. Okay? He'll be found that. She will get not only between $1,200 and $1,400 a month from the VA, she'll also get $2,000 from the state, and because her husband's death was due to something that occurred in a war zone, she will never pay property taxes on her property for the rest of her life, as long as she lives in Massachusetts. You can't beat that with a stick, you know, and those are the type of things that these things change all the time. You need to stay up on them, okay? We have the state program that gives out benefits to veterans. We have about, and widows by the way, so make sure your wives know, you kick the bucket, they can come and see me at any time, we'll sit down and figure out if they're eligible for anything. The ordinary benefits program looks at the issue of income and whether or not you need help. Now, most of us that live in Georgetown are not in that boat, but there are about somewhere between 8 and 10 here in town that are on ordinary benefits. And we've had a couple that have been on benefits at the end of life stages because they're paying for an awful lot of expensive medical type of procedures, and they do qualify, and we basically will help them with all of their medical expenses. The baseline on that is 200% of the poverty level and no more than $3,200 per person in convertible assets. In other words, we're going to ask for your last 3 months of bank account. We want to know what you have in terms of savings. I have to investigate all of these things to make sure that nobody is, you know, that there's no fraud involved. But she was on our program before she died. She had cancer. Okay, her husband had died many, many years before. We were reimbursing her Medicare, we were paying for her health insurance, we were paying all of her co-pays for everything. So what that does for somebody who goes on the program is basically it puts you into a category of saying, I don't have to worry about the one thing that is going to be the most flexible in our life in terms of maybe taking all my assets away from me. Again, it is a low-income program, you know, and you do have to meet those qualifications. But if you've got 10 grand in the bank, come and see me. I can tell you some legitimate ways to take that money and put it aside into what's called a burial account with the local bank. A burial account in your executor's name for you. You can put a certain amount aside. That's a very legitimate way of doing it, because if you die with no means to bury you, we bury you. Okay, so why wouldn't the state say, yeah, put a burial account? That makes a lot of sense, because otherwise the state's going to have to pay for your burial. One other thing that I really want to talk about. It's test time, guys. Okay. You have seen on television about the OEF, OIF people coming back. And I want to know, in your mind, Afghanistan and Iraq, okay? It's been 10 years on that war. I want to know, in your estimation, how many people we have had serve over there that have lost limbs. All right? How many think 50 to 100,000? Okay, I got about 3. How many think 25 to 50,000? How many think 10 to 25,000? 5 to 10,000? Less than 5,000. The answer is 1,606. Why do you think you had the impression it was 25 to 50,000?
Press.
Media. Media, media, media. Everything that is happening today is coming through that boob tube, and they are all marketing experts. Wounded Warriors Project, what do they show you? They show you the guys without limbs. And then you hear, if you listen closely enough, they'll talk to you about TBI and PTSD. Well, yes, there is a higher incidence of PTSD coming out of this war, because as soon as you're over there, you're behind the lines. You don't know what's going to happen. You know, it's a little bit different than in World War II, where we were pushing them back. There is a certain amount of PTSD because of these IEDs, the improvised explosive devices. You know, we have a lot more TBI because these kids are sitting in, or young people are sitting inside of tanks or armored vehicles with helmets on, and that concussion just rattles around and scrambles their brain a little bit. It doesn't mean we didn't have TBI in Vietnam or in Korea or in World War II. It just means now they've identified that through medicine, that there is something very special about that kind of thing. But the problem is, you're being blasted every single day with, give me money, give me money, give me money for my program because I'm helping veterans. There are probably 100,000 organizations out there asking you for money to help veterans. And a good percentage of them are not really legitimate. There are so many, and it doesn't matter what you say at the national level, you know, and the fact that they have the money to say, I'm the Wounded Warrior Project, or I'm the Run to Home Base program, or any of the rest of these. You need to be studying what it is they do with that money. And you're going to find out, you know, my wife passed of breast cancer about 14 months ago. So I was really into, I got to help out the breast cancer organizations, until you realize that a lot of them are not truly for the cure or truly putting money into breast cancer research or any of the rest of that. What they're doing is they're taking money and throwing it out to get more money in. You know, they're out there doing community outreach, which is a way of saying we're trying to get more money. And then they hire their executives, you know, at 6-digit incomes, and their job is to bring in more money. How is that helping veterans? How is that helping breast cancer victims? How is that helping research? It's not. Okay? And there are tons of these organizations out. And there are big ones and there are small ones, and you don't give money anymore unless you know what that money is going for. I have made the conscious determination I will never give again to a national organization, especially when I heard last week, listening to the Red Sox and getting all excited as they're winning the game, that the Wounded Warrior Project, which has the country western singer telling us we have to help everybody, gave $1 million to the Run to Home Base program. Wait a minute. One charity is taking my money and giving it to another charity. Come on. You know, who are you helping? The Run to Home Base program supported a whopping 500 veterans in the first year. 500. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of support. You know, and I'm not saying they're bad. You run the home bases, the Boston Red Sox in conjunction with Mass General Hospital, but you ask them, what do? Hey, that little community outreach comes out loud and strong. We're out there in the communities teaching them about TBI and PTSD. Community outreach, come on, give me a break. I guarantee you the spouse of that individual who came back from Iraq knows whether or not that person has either TBI or PTSD. And the problem isn't educating them on whether or not they have it. It's trying to figure out a way to get that particular soldier or Marine in for help. Because we've all done it. You know, that's not me. I don't need help. We've all done it. Right? So what I'm saying is to you is if you want to give your money to charity, A, if you're a churchgoer, there's your number one place to give it. Give it to your church. For me in this area, I will give it to things like the church, for the YWCA up in Newburyport, to Ipswich Caring in Ipswich, but it's a local group and I'm going to know exactly what they do and how the money is spent. Don't put up with all of those ads on TV anymore because most of it is BS. And it is meant specifically to get you to think in one vein even though the money isn't going there. And Wounded Warrior Project is the best one to show for that. You know, how can you say you're for veterans? You know, the words are there. You could never catch them legally because the words are there. They take care of, they're supporting traumatic brain injury issues and PTSD issues. But I guarantee you that's 99% of where the money is going is into those issues, whether it be through community outreach or whatever programs. And only 1% is actually going to that person you see, that they're visually giving you as the disabled veteran with the loss of a limb. Because there aren't that many out there. And it's the same ones they keep recycling in every ad.
Like polio. Yeah, been March of Dimes was just part of that. And they're still going strong today. But it wasn't, they didn't get a inoculation for that until Dr. Salt.
Right, in the 50s.
And it wasn't until one of his relatives got polio that came out, so.
I am convinced that if we didn't have so many people trying to make money in the nonprofit world, I'm convinced we could solve a lot of these problems if that's where the money was going. You know, and you hear, you know, you heard about the, what was it, Coleman for the cure for breast cancer?
Yeah.
You know, and the next thing you know, they're oh, well, they've stopped giving the money to Planned Parenthood, and then there's this thing, so now they're giving it to Planned Parenthood. Why? What does Planned Parenthood have to do with breast cancer? Oh, well, we have women in there, so we give them vouchers to go get a mammogram. You know, this is one political body feeding another political body is all that really amounts to. And that's where most of this money that you're giving to charity is going. You know, at least you know when you give through your church, maybe that's going to spread missions abroad or even within the U.S. You know what that money is going for. When you give it to something like the YWCA up in Newburyport, you know the programs that they have because they tell you, here's what we're spending our money on. And you know you're paying for people. You know that. Okay, there's nobody who can do something without having a paycheck coming in. So you're paying for your minister at the church. You know, you're paying for the secretary at the church or whoever has to do that work. You're paying for the executives with the YWCA. You're paying for people also. At least you know what you're paying for. And you know what you're getting for your money. And that's the important thing on that. All right. Yes, sir.
I heard on the radio this morning that an average of 22 veterans a day commit suicide in this country.
Wow.
And this wasn't anything to do with raising money, it was just a fact that does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah. And now what is your immediate reaction when you hear that 22 veterans a day are committing suicide? What's your immediate reaction? These young kids coming back, right? The average age of those 22 people is 64 years of age. Who does that tell you is really committing suicide? the Vietnam vets. Those are your suicide people. Why? Think about it. You know, we had more people in Vietnam than any war since World War II. We had a huge number of people. A lot of them were drafted, sent in there. They were not preconditioned. They would serve less than 2 years, and yet they did a full year in Vietnam. That's number one. Two, they came home. They got spit on. They got called baby killers. It didn't matter what branch of service they were in. If you wore the uniform of the United States, you were a terrible person. And a lot of those people today still won't admit that they're veterans. They will not say to you publicly, they'll come and see me, but they're not going to tell you guys that they're a veteran. Because they were in Vietnam, and we didn't treat them right. Now, and therefore what you've got is a series of people who went underground, and that, by the way, is my biggest caseload today, is PTSD in Vietnam veterans. Because they're finally waking up to the fact that they weren't a bad person. Now I can go get help. You know, but that's also the ones who, when they can't get help, they commit suicide. 64 is your average age on most veterans committing suicide. And they don't give that word out very much. I got that on Huckabee, believe it or not. You know, the word is not out there very well. Each generation reacts differently too. PTSD is, it may not be totally curable, but it is something that is treatable. And you can help people with PTSD. But you have to be a professional doing it, and you have to steer them into what works for them. The World War II generation, we put them in institutions. And we let them, you know, rattle around inside their brains for a long time. The Vietnam generation wrote books. You will see an awful lot of books out there from guys who served in Vietnam who talk about their service in Vietnam. That is their way of getting out what happened to them so that they can deal with the issue of post-traumatic stress. Today's generation, you know, we're talking about the electronic generation. They don't write, you know, and if they do, it's you are, you know, it's all texting type of writing, right? So what they do is they go see a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Patton, the son of Major General Patton, the grandson of General Patton from World War II. And Ben Patton has a program now where he lets them tape their experiences, you know, and put it on tape in such a way that they can convey to the people that it's important for them to convey it to what has happened to them. And it is working, okay? But each generation is a different generation. You have to approach them in the way that works for them. Very important. Anybody else got any insight? Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is an issue that is very important to me. Yes?
Oh, he told me about this suicide thing, and my first reply was, well, these young people that are in the war now, I said, they're a different generation than we were when we went to war. And the training that they had is altogether different than what we had. And I figured that would be the reason for the high number of suicides. And you brought it up in Vietnam.
What you find on the training front is we did train our World War II guys, not the ones who went in first because they weren't ready for that war. But we did a lot of training. And you think about what the 101st and the 82nd Airborne went through just to be trained to be able to jump. You know, there was a lot better training in World War II than there was for Korea or for Vietnam. Vietnam, I think they sent you to what, a 2-week or a 3-week school of how to evade if you're captured type of stuff. You know, it was very little. And you look at the time frame, and these kids were drafted, and they were out in 1 year and 9 months, and you know they served a full year in Vietnam. How the heck did you do that and train them? Today's young generation, it takes 2 years to get that person trained up to be useful in any branch of the service. So, are we ever going to go back to a 2-year draft? I hope to hell not. Okay, because you're just getting somebody useful when you send them out. There's something else about that you need to hear. what percentage of Americans between the age of 18 and 28, the second part of your quiz, are eligible to go into the military? 18 to 28, male or female. What percentage?
I would say about 30%.
25?
You're getting closer by going from there to there. 17%. Okay. Too many convictions. Cannot meet the physical fitness standards. Too many dependents. Yeah, all kinds of problems. You know, the day of the judge saying, you got your choice, boy, you're going to either go in the Marine Corps or you're going to go to jail, is gone. These kids today, you have one offense, you're out. You have one alcohol offense, you're out. A lot of us would have had a tough time back in the day staying in service with those type of rules, but that's the rules. Why? One, because we're integrated. We have men and women, and we all know that alcohol in young men, putting them with a woman, is a bad idea, okay? Because it is not going to be a good outcome. This is what our service is today, 17%. Now, so when somebody says to you, oh, we should have mandatory government service for everybody. Really? If only 17% can go in our military and be trained, what are you going to do with those other 83%? You know, you're going to take the guy who is physically unfit and send him to Africa? You know, in the Peace Corps? What are you going to do with those 83%? You can't use them for hardly anything. You can take the dad with 4 kids or the mom with 4 kids and say, oh, by the way, we're sending you into isolated duty somewhere. You know, can't do it. There is no way we can have a national service with what is happening in our country today. It just can't happen. Because, again, 83% would be, quote, exempt. So how are you fixing anything by letting 83% not even be involved in national service? Intellectually, it's a good concept. Wouldn't we all love it if everybody had to serve the country for some reason? But practically, it'll never happen. It cannot happen.
I heard someone say, well, we ought to go back to the CCC camps, which is a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
But who are going to be the teachers today? That's another
In the
thing.
day of the CCC camps, if a woman got pregnant, she was not around anymore, around the house. She wasn't even around the town. She was sent away to her aunts to quietly give birth to that child and put it up for adoption. Today it's, look at me, I'm pregnant! Right?
In school, too.
You know, so you send them to a CCC camp, you know, they'll probably be pregnant inside of a couple of weeks. You know, not everybody. You know, we know there are good people. We know there are people who don't have a very good compass. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't work in general in our society anymore. Our society has changed too dramatically. And I'm not necessarily saying change for the better. Other questions? I'm enjoying this, guys. You know, good discussion. Come on, you gotta have something more.
Yeah, our generation, I think, has seen the best of this country.
Has done what?
Seen the best of this country.
I think you were 100% right. You know, if I were to write a book today, the title would be, I lived in the best of times in the United States. Because I did. You know, and we're not looking, we've gone over that hump and we are definitely going downhill. There's no doubt in my mind about it. It doesn't mean the young people today who are leading our communities and what aren't good people. But in general, as your society moves into the more and more of gimme, 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 you know, we weren't raised with gimme. We were raised with it's our job to make our way in life. And now, all of us have family members, I'd be willing to bet it, who they're on the dole in one way or another. You know, they're getting money one way or another. It's all legal, but is it right? You know, and this is how our society is turned, you know, to now where everything has to go through the government and back down to people to help them. You know, when I was growing up, it was, and I'm probably the youngest in this room, but when I was growing up, the churches, the families, those are the units that took care of people and their issues. Okay, and they helped them. And you brought somebody into your house who was a cousin because she needed help or he needed help. You know, nowadays, let's send the money to the government and then they can give it back to you to take care of it.
It's the beginning of a police state.
You know, I don't know if it's a police state so much. I think we have to worry a little bit and keep ever mindful of that concept. Because that would be the absolute worst thing that could happen in this society, is to have it go to a police state. We're worried right now about eavesdropping and electronics because, let's face it guys, we're not the Twidgets of this world. The Twidgets of this world are our kids. You know, the ones who are in their 30s that know how all this electronics fits together into our lives. You know, and they're the ones that understand a lot better than we do how we're being listened to. But I think it's important that we all at least have enough of an understanding to say, nah, I don't think I want the NSA listening in on cell phone conversations. Yes, I recognize that, 0.1% may be doing something illegal, and 0.1% of that 0.1% may be doing something that could cause harm to people in the United States of America. But is that enough reason for them to eavesdrop on everybody's conversations? That's kind of counter to what we as a nation were all about. Tough luck. It's not easy decision making. But we have to also understand that when you have a government that does not consider itself accountable, okay, and that can be at the local level, state level, or the federal level, if they do not consider themselves accountable to the people, we've lost the war. And right now, the Congress of the United States and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are that way. They don't care what the people think. Because it's, I'm right, we do it my way, and in this state, it's one-party state. There is nothing better than having a 49-51 split in government. Nothing better. Let them hit their heads against each other all the time. That's what government should be about. That's what our founding fathers saw it as. Okay? And the other thing you need to understand when we're talking about founding fathers is that, hey, they didn't found this country on the principle of democracy. They founded this country on the principle of capitalism. The same people who didn't want King George dipping their hands into his pocket, or dipping his hand into their pockets, are the reason that I ended up serving in an organization called the U.S. Coast Guard. Because 10 years after the Revolutionary War was won, they refused to pay the customs duties. The same people. And we had to go out and create something called the Coast Guard to try and stop them from smuggling stuff into this country to sell it. It's capitalism, okay? But we should and we must regulate capitalism to some extent. But let's not come under the idea, the false notion that, what the talking heads are telling us is necessarily true, because it isn't.
So.
Hi, they're here already, I'll bet you.
I know, they're getting ready to. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. I enjoyed that. I really did. You have my phone number on your pen.
And I always
Give me
have
a
it
call
in the office
next
too.
week, please. And please, some of you do get a hold of.
Did you tell them about the Pembroke?
Right, I did. And that was, what was her name?
Camille Early.
Camille Early is the secretary there.
Assistant
Please
at
give her a
Early.
call at Pembroke and tell her if you will, that you will come.
Yeah.
So that they have some veterans to show up. That's
Right,
important.
it is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow at 9, I think the ceremony starts at 9:45. They'll probably want you there around 9:30.
So I know it's very short notice, but if anybody's able to go, it's a really nice opportunity to be with the kids and to have the kids have that experience, and provide some some real, it makes it very tangible for children to see, oh, this is what we're talking about. We're involved. So, thank you. We also, next week too, I'll have Russ McQueen in to, well, for music on Wednesday, November 12th, 10 o'clock at the church. It was always a lot of fun. So join us, come join us too. And, you know, next month we'll have Dr. Coleman, like I said, and it'll be good.
Sounds good.
I'm already planning the breakfast menu. So thank you, and always I have Terry's contact information in the office. So.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.